I thank the Minister for his internal investigation report, which has provided a lot of new insight into the case. There's no reason to doubt the findings. I also agree with the Minister that we have to look after the morale of our police force. However, in this case, a police officer has taken his own life after alleging workplace bullying, racial discrimination, and unfair treatment after whistleblowing within the Singapore police force. A better way to clear the air may be to appoint a committee of inquiry to investigate the case rather than through an internal investigation. So may I ask the Minister why he has chosen an internal investigation by the police force itself as opposed to appointing a committee of inquiry? Just a matter of interest. Thank you.
Minister Shanmugam.
Sir, it's precisely because of the sentiments like what Mr. Leong has expressed, which have found favor in some countries, that you see the morale of the police force and public trust in the police force going down south. Let me explain. I think member perhaps didn't listen to my ministerial statement. I'm not sure he was in the chambers when I talked about the UK. I don't know, perhaps you can confirm. Were you in chambers? Sir, can I ask through you whether he was in chambers when I talked about the UK?
Mr. Leong?
Minister, you are talking about your
ministerial statement where I referred
just now?
to... Yes.
Yes, I was in the chamber.
Thank you, because I thought I hadn't seen you. Now, then you would have known me saying what the morale of the UK police officers was. I think member will recall. More than half, a significant number, take a very dim view of their prospects. 70% will not recommend somebody else to join the force, and a significant number blame their own government and the endless enquiries. Every time there is an allegation, a committee of inquiry. Every time there is an allegation, they are made the subject of the scapegoated. You put officers through this each time there is an allegation, public inquiries. What are you really saying? That they'll be put out there, hung out to dry, regardless of the facts. And you ask yourself, you think more people are going to join the police force? Is that good for Singapore? Is that the kind of society we want? I mean, bottom line is, do we trust the police force? Do we trust the Internal Affairs Office? Why do you think 90% of Singaporeans have trust in the police force? Why do we take a theoretical approach when in practice in Singapore, it's a low crime society, it's a high trust society, there is tremendous trust in the police force, we solve crimes with the methods that we have used. So what is it about those methods that are wrong? Why do you want to go down a route like the UK does? Have you seen the results of their system? Yesterday I set out what happens in other countries, and today I went back to talking about what happens in other countries. Let me give you the figures. "87% of the police officers in survey by the Police Federation of England released last year said morale within the force is currently low or very low. 70% would not recommend others to join the police. 95% said their morale was harmed by their treatment by their government, which includes these sorts of committees of inquiry. Now, if there is something specific that you have, Mr. Leong, in terms of the facts that have been disclosed, I mean, do you question the form that I sent out on the medical leave and the no-pay leave of the officer? These are matters of record. Do you question the point that I made, that he made 3 allegations of bullying? 2 of them were found to have been substantiated, but they had been investigated when he had first made the complaint, and he didn't follow up. He accepted it. And the 3rd one was unsubstantiated. And the police had actually taken action against the officers. So when you talk about a committee of inquiry or commission of inquiry, I would invite you to say, which part of this explanation do you disagree with or you find questionable? Perhaps if you illuminate that, explain that, then we can discuss. Rather than in generalities that we ought to follow other systems, when our system is doing much better than any of these systems that you can refer to. Perhaps you can tell me which part of the explanation do you think is questionable?
Mr. Leong Mun Wai.
Mr. Speaker, I think I would also like to make a point that the minister has not been attentive to what I said. I said there's no reason to doubt the findings. And I think people know why I raised the question, because justice must not only be done, it must also be seen to be done. And in this case, I think we are not asking for, or at least I'm not asking for, that in the future, any complaints about our police force, we will make a big fuss out of it. But in this case, I think it is very special. Well, unfortunately, it's very special because a policeman has given up his life. So I thought we should investigate this case with a committee of inquiry. But of course, we respect the decisions made by the minister. I'm just asking the minister what has been in his mind when he made the decision. Just that. Thank you.
I thank Mr. Leong for that clarification. It is a matter of considerable regret to me personally, and I'm sure to every member in this House, that someone took his life. In particular, it's a matter of considerable regret and dismay that for the home team, that it's a police officer. Of course, it affects us. It affects me, it affects the police force, his colleagues. None of us wants to see it, and we have the deepest of feelings for his family, for himself, and that is why I've taken considerable trouble not to go into, considerable care not to go into what exactly happened, except to set out in the briefest of outlines, right? And so it is a very, very sad matter. Deepest condolences to the family. Regret is even not adequate to convey the very deep feelings we have of, about what happened. We wish it had been otherwise. What the police force can say is that they did everything they can to help him. They provided psychological assistance, they gave him days off, they gave him leave. I think I mean, if you take 2015, if a person doesn't turn up for work 150 days, 100 days of no pay leave and 40 days of medical leave, I think it's an extraordinary organization that gives that level of flexibility. And then the next year, no pay leave of 216 days and 70 days of medical leave. That makes it 286 days out of 360. So it's 80 days where he was at work minus weekends or days off. So again, that level of flexibility was given. So this is a very, it's a caring organization that cared for him and gave him a lot of support. I think members will accept that. And then come back to 2022, he was on no pay leave for 160 days. And he was on medical leave for 80 days. That's 240 days out of 360, excluding weekends. I don't think you will see this in many organizations, certainly not in the private sector, but the police force had been very, very supportive of trying to help this officer. And that's the approach they take to every police officer. Any police officer taking his life is a tragedy for us. We don't want to see that, right? And likewise, any allegation, whether by a police officer or not by a police officer, has to be taken seriously, as I explained why. And when it's by a police officer, it will be taken seriously by the public, and the police will, of course, also take it seriously, simply because a police officer making these allegations can be expected to know more about what he is saying in context, and we need to really investigate, which is why it was investigated thoroughly, and I had the Attorney General's chambers review those findings, and then I reviewed them myself. There are proper cases for a committee of inquiry. There are proper cases for commission of inquiry. I've explained when some matters will go for committee of inquiry and commission for inquiry. This is a matter. I've set out the facts publicly, and people can assess for themselves how the facts look. Yeah? Thank you very much.